Let's speak now to Lord Clive Soley, who is a Labour peer. Clive, welcome to the programme. It seemed to me that Rachel Reeves, when she was quizzed afterwards, being asked questions by journalists about whether this would mean putting up income tax, she didn't answer it, which normally in politics means I don't want to give you the answer because the general public won't like the sound of it. Do you think I'm onto something?
I think it also means, I mean, there's an element of truth in what you said, but it's also true that you're not going to start talking about a budget when you haven't made the decisions yet. So that's sensible. What she was doing this morning is two things, and they're both very important. The first one was sending a clear message to the markets that the borrowing rules aren't going to change, because that's what's brought stability to the British economy in the last year or so. So that was an important message, and the markets and the various business organisations will welcome that. The second one, which you're indicating, is there is likely to be increased taxes, although I think you'll have to be a bit careful of this because you might find it's about major changes in taxes. One of the most interesting things being floated at the moment is a small cut in the national insurance rate and an increase in standard rate tax, because that would not hit people on lower incomes. So, there are arguments around it which are much more complex, but I'd be surprised if there isn't more tax. Because the other thing I'd say that you need to focus on too, I was a bit concerned when you gave your little list of things of what was wrong with the British economy. There's two big ones you didn't mention. One is obviously Ukraine. One of the last speeches I made in the House of Lords in November 2017 pointed out that we needed to increase our defence expenditure to about 3% if we were to avoid another major war in Europe. And I don't always agree with Donald Trump, but he's absolutely right in saying that the United States should not be bearing the defence burden which ought to be carried by Europe. But if you want to avoid a major war in Europe, and there is a danger of that, there's a touch of the 1930s about our present situation, then we are in Europe going to have to increase defence spending. The other big one, which is you can't do anything about really, is that in the last 20 odd years, China and Asia have become major competitors economically, and because they are behind the curve in terms of some of the services that you get in the West, it's obviously going to be easier for them to outperform the West.
Yeah, I mean, you said those 2 points. It's interesting, actually, with Ukraine. Some people might see it as an advantage if we start increasing defence spending, because it directly invests things like the weapons industry, of which the UK actually has quite a thriving sector in terms of the military-industrial complex.
Yeah, so let's do it, but you have to pay for it in the first instance. It only benefits for you when you get those orders coming through. But it is happening.
In terms of China's competitiveness, they have a major advantage that they don't seem to give two hoots about climate change and are building coal-fired power stations while Ed Miliband is running over to Beijing on a regular basis to buy green technology. I mean, surely we're playing into the hands of that unfair advantage.
That's a bit too simplistic, because China actually has made remarkable progress in cutting its emissions, but coal is still a problem there. Also, it is true that the Chinese have not made the advances that have been made in the West over the last almost 200 years, actually. And that means we in the West, not just Britain, this is why we have this problem in France, Germany, United States, the economies are struggling because they can't keep up with that East Asian explosion of economic efficiency and competence. That's a major long-term problem. I mean, I'm not saying that there's an easy answer to it. There's not. All I'm saying is don't deduct the difficult issues. They are there.
I understand the nuance of all of this, but I sometimes wonder if the Labour government understands the nuance of all of this, because we know we're facing economic hardship. We know we're struggling to compete in a globalised world with workforces that cost far less than our own and energy bills that cost far less than our own. So why are we the one country in the developed world who are going hell for leather for net zero, which is going to cost, by the end of the Labour Party's term, £60 billion? When you look at things like the public sector pay rises, that's added an extra £10 billion onto the public purse. Surely these are things, if you were going to be prudent and pragmatic about our economic situation, were simply not affordable right now.
Well, you're not actually correct in saying we are the only government that's doing it this way. In fact, if you look around the Western world, some have made remarkable progress, not just the West, incidentally. Some developing countries have done far more than we've done. And then if you look individual states, in the United States, even where Trump is bearing down on it, you find that places like California are doing far better than we are and many others. Why? Because companies and others recognize that climate change is a serious problem and we've got to deal with it. Now, that's this second part of Rachel Reeves' message that needs to be addressed, really. You know, you're quite right. Taxes will probably, not definitely, but probably go up in some form. She might be able to adjust things in other ways as well. And that is going to happen throughout the Western world. Look at those problems in France at the moment, and you recognize the British economy is in a better place than the French economy. So you sort of saying, "Oh, it's terrible in Britain." I have to say, I'm proud of what Britain
Well, look,
is.
I'm well aware.
Well, I'm not sure that you are. Don't come over that you're proud of Britain. It comes over that you're sort of trying to rubbish it all the time.
Well, no, what I am trying to rubbish is some of the decisions taken by this government that I am paying for, that I am paying through the nose for, when I don't really cost the state anything. And I'll mention two things, shall I, that Rachel Reeves failed to mention this morning, which most of my listeners realise are a huge blight on the country's record of governance and don't feel particularly fair.
What's a blight?
One of them is migration, and the number of people who are foreign-born subsisting off benefits and not working and not contributing to our economy, the cost of illegal immigration into this country, that wasn't mentioned by her at all. And the second one is the huge welfare bill, which of course she did mention last time round. One of the reasons the IMF didn't rubbish our economy is because in theory the welfare bill was going to be in train through Parliament, which of course the Labour backbenchers blocked. She said again that that bill has to come down, but will it be executed? Will your party get behind that?
I think you've got a strong case when you talk about the benefits issue. And the Labour government is struggling with that. On the immigration thing, you need to think this through. 3 years ago, before the Labour government in power, 1 million people came to Britain under the immigration rules of the last government. It is actually dramatically dropping. And what they've got to do, because this will, make people feel much better, if you can deal with the boat problem. The boat problem is not a quick fix. And people have learned that now. Even reform is recognising it's not a quick fix. You've got to sort it out in a number of ways, and it is very, very important that it is sorted out.
Well, let's hope it does get sorted out on both of those issues, because the general public are certainly, I think, on the doorstep saying that they are of grave concern. Brilliant. Thank you so much for joining me, Lord Soley. Always great to have a Labour voice on.